Raj Sisodia es miembro fundador del Movimiento de Capitalismo Consciente, profesor distinguido FEMSA en Empresas Conscientes y presidente del Centro de Empresas Conscientes del Tecnológico de Monterrey. Raj ha publicado 14 libros, incluidos The Healing Organization, Conscious Capitalism, Firms of Endearment, The Rule of Three, Everybody Matters y su más reciente publicación, Awaken the Path to Purpose, Inner Peace and Healing, así como más de 100 artículos académicos. Su trabajo ha aparecido en el Wall Street Journal, The New York Times, Fortune, Financial Times, The Washington Post, The Boston Globe, CNBC y muchos otros medios de comunicación a nivel mundial. Raj formó parte de la junta directiva de The Container Store y Mastec Ltd. Es cofundador, copresidente y miembro del Consejo de Administración de Conscious Capitalism, Inc.
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I would like to welcome you to the beginning of your higher education journey here at Tecnológico de Monterrey. This is one of the most exciting and innovative educational institutions in the world. And I think you can look forward to a wonderful education that will prepare you not only to be successful in your career, but also to be fulfilled and happy and impactful in your lives. And one of the great things about Tecnológico de Monterrey is that they have embraced this idea of how business needs to evolve in the future, the idea of conscious capitalism. And you will hear a lot about that as you go through your studies here. So I'm going to talk to you today about conscious capitalism and the role of business in healing our world. You know, we are living at a very interesting time. It's a unique time in the history of the world. It is simultaneously, we would say, the best of times and the worst of times. This is the classic book by Charles Dickens, Tale of Two Cities. And he talked about that idea that at the same time, it can be wonderful. You know, there's never been a better time to be born a human being. All of the indicators of human development are at historic highs. Your opportunity to get an education, to lead a meaningful life, to have meaning and purpose in your life, to realize your dreams, fulfill your potential, all of those are much higher than ever before. We have more peace and more prosperity compared to historic norms. And yet at the same time, we are also facing very major challenges, existential threats in some way. Climate change, of course, being one of them, but there are others as well. Income inequality, etc., the extinction of species. So we would say that this is a time when it's the best of times, the worst of times. It's the age of wisdom and the age of foolishness, season of light, season of darkness, etc. And which direction we go in the future really depends a lot on us, especially in the world of business. Business will have a lot to say about the direction of our future, whether we are going to enter a new golden age and continue to progress, or in fact, if we continue business as usual, we can actually head down a very dark road and we can destroy our own habitat, the planet that gives us life and gives life to all the other incredible species that coexist with us. That is also threatened right now by our actions, what we have done in the last couple of centuries. So if you think about the positive side of that, what has capitalism done? A system that is about 250 years old at most has really enabled humanity to take off. You know, in that relatively brief amount of time, every indicator of human flourishing has exploded. Life expectancy has more than doubled. The percentage of people living in extreme poverty that used to be 90% in the 1800s is now below 9%. The literacy rate has gone from 14 to 88%. Our human population has gone from 1 billion to 8 billion. Many more people are living longer, fuller lives because of this idea of modern free market capitalism, free markets and free people, people having the freedom to pursue their passions, to pursue their dreams, to create businesses, to meet the needs that exist in the world out there. You know, in a free market society, governments are not supposed to meet our needs. They create the conditions where businesses have the opportunity, but also the responsibility to do that in a caring way. So again, all the indicators are at all-time highs in terms of material prosperity, the quality of our life, the length of our life, etc. At the same time, there's a lot of disconnect as well. You know, people have lost confidence in business, and this has been going on for about 40 years. And this is data from the US, but you see similar numbers. In many places, 86% of Americans don't trust big business. And America, remember, is the home of global capitalism. So there's something that has happened in the way that we have talked about and taught and practiced business certainly in the last 50 years, starting around 1970, that has actually disconnected us from the people who are impacted most by the business. And you start to see why that is. You see surveys that say that the majority of people, in fact, as high as 88% of people, feel that they don't really matter to the company. Company doesn't care about them as a human being. You just see them as a function or an object. So there's a dehumanization that has been going on at work. Another part of it is the economic side of things. Capitalism is capable of creating widespread prosperity, but the fact is that over the last 50 years, you've seen a growing gap between the haves and the have-nots, the rich and the poor. You see it very dramatically in the US, as you can see here. The numbers are showing that the top 1% has risen significantly in the share of overall income, and the bottom 50% has fallen significantly in the US. Similar in Europe as well, although not as pronounced. And you see it also in Latin America. If you look at income inequality, which is a measure called Gini, these are some of the highest levels in the world you see across the Latin American region. Just for comparison, the global average is 38, and you can see that every single one of the Central and South American countries is significantly above that. So this is a problem that is even more pronounced in this part of the world. And you see these kinds of juxtapositions, right? In every major city, you will see the favelas, and you will see, of course, people living in luxury. So that gap is very significant, and in some ways, it has been growing. The long-term trend is that we are reducing poverty, but in the last 10 years, if you look from 2012 to 22, and part of this is the pandemic that was going on still, you can see that in a number of countries, and certainly in South America, the percentage of people who are living in extreme poverty at $5.50 a day US, which is not extreme, but still very, very low level of subsistence, has actually increased in most of these countries. You see it most dramatically in places like Venezuela, going from 29 to 90%. Again, a country that has abandoned capitalism and embraced socialism, but that actually doesn't work. That does not create prosperity. But even the free market capitalist countries, you can see all of them, I think without exception, the percentage of people living in poverty has gone up. So there's something that's not working well for ordinary people. And you can see some of the other indicators of suffering out there in the Latin American and Caribbean region, that these are the regions where people worry every day about life much more than in other parts of the world. They're the lowest percentage of people who are satisfied with what we're doing for the environment. In fact, this region is the keeper of some of the most vital resources of the planet, like the rainforest. The people are really worried, as in Brazil, for example, that we're not doing enough. And also, people feel like they're not treated with respect at work. So the culture is one where people are disconnected and feel disrespected and feel like companies are not doing what they need to do to protect our future. So this idea of American-style capitalism, which is really very financially focused and very short-term oriented, has been spreading around the world, is really not working well. It's very obvious. And it's not working well for ordinary people and for the planet. It's working very well for the people at the top. It's making them richer year by year. But ordinary people are suffering a lot. And we saw the data on income inequality. The question is, where did we go wrong on this? How did this happen? How did we take this idea of capitalism, which, as I said, can create prosperity for everybody and create a world in which many people are suffering? I think it goes back to this one basic idea that business only exists to make money. There's one thing I want you to keep in mind for the business education that you're going to have the next 4 to 5 years, is that this is not the purpose of business. Profit is a necessary ingredient. It is one of the outcomes when you do business well. It is a requirement for the business to stay alive and to grow, but it is not the reason why companies exist. But this idea has been around for about 50 years, that business only exists to make money. And when you make it that, then you end up causing a lot of suffering for other stakeholders, because you trade off the well-being of your employees, the well-being of your communities and your suppliers and the planet, etc. That none of that matters if, in fact, you cannot increase profit. Right? So you only do things that increase profit. So everything else has been suffering over time. So what we conclude from that is that we need to celebrate capitalism. It has done a lot for humanity. Right? Business has played a huge role in the progress we've made. But we also need to elevate it with higher consciousness. We're not the same as we were 200 years ago, 100 years ago, even 50 years ago. Human beings are evolving. We need to apply that higher consciousness to the world of business and capitalism as well. If you don't do that, then it can get destroyed. We know what happened in Venezuela. We know what happened in Cuba years ago, and many other, about 38 times in the world, where capitalism has been removed and some kind of totalitarian socialist communist system has been put into place. And it's always a disaster. But you can see it happening currently in countries like Chile and Colombia and Bolivia and many other countries across the region. You can see major protests that people have engaged in the last few years and significant swings in the political landscape, reflecting the underlying suffering that a lot of people are really struggling to survive under the way that we are practicing capitalism today. The fact is, we need to change how we think about business and how we think about profit. Paul Polman was the CEO of Unilever, one of the great conscious companies in the world, and dramatically transformed that company. And as he says, profit should not come from creating the world's problems, but from solving them. Now, that sounds obvious, but the fact is that a lot of businesses made a lot of money by adding to our problems, certainly by destroying the environment, but also by creating incredible levels of stress and burnout and damaging the health and well-being of employees and of communities, and even the well-being of customers. We sell a lot of products that are not good for customers, right? Just to maximize how much money we can make. So again, profits have to be earned by solving problems, not by creating problems. That's really at the root of conscious capitalism. So business as usual is not an option. The old mentality that our grandfathers and fathers and mothers and others thought about, business is only about making money. No, that has to change. And in a way, what I say is it's time for business to wake up. We have to face the reality of the world we live in. What are the changing requirements that exist out there, right, with the people and the planet and so forth. So we have to wake up and see reality as it exists. We have to grow up in the sense that we have to become mature about our responsibilities. It's not just to make money for the owners. It is about impacting the world in a positive way. So we have to wake up and grow up and then show up and be part of confronting the major challenges that the world faces. We cannot be hiding in our corner and just trying to maximize our profit while the world is evolving in a negative way. We have to be part of the conversation. We have to be part of the solution for all of the major problems. And the bigger the company, the more imperative it is that they are, in fact, part of the solution. So in order to do that, we have to rethink everything. Why do we exist as leaders, as individuals, as students? And also, why do our companies exist? Right? What do we do? What is our focus for our work? How do we do that work? Right? How does it feel to work in our companies? Who are we as leaders? How do we define success? And what is our time horizon? All of these questions now need new answers. And that's where this movement called Conscious Capitalism comes in. We ask the 4 fundamental questions about business: why, what, who, and how. And we have different answers today. And we need to have different answers to that question, or each of those questions. So starting with why, the old answer used to be we make money, we're about profit, right? Now we say, no, there needs to be a higher purpose, not just a purpose, but a higher purpose, something that is about really solving and meeting the problems that exist in the world and bringing joy and fulfillment and reducing suffering in the world through our business. What do we do? It was about creating wealth for the shareholders. Now it's about creating value of multiple kinds for all stakeholders. Who are we as leaders? It used to be just somebody who can deliver the numbers, the results. No, it's about taking people to a better place. It's about serving the people. It's about serving the purpose of the organization. It's not about your ego. And how does it feel to work? In traditional businesses, people are burned out, stressed out, engagement is low, turnover is high. In conscious businesses, there's a caring culture, there's a high level of trust and accountability and transparency. So people really look forward to going to work. They love what they do. And that's a huge difference. And that's ultimately the fundamental difference between a conscious business and a traditional business. Traditional businesses are purely about self-interest. The self-interest of the owners to make money, of the employees to have a job, of customers to get products, etc. Conscious businesses recognize that self-interest is valid, but they also are built on love and care. Human beings have a need to care. We need to bring that into business. And this was the question asked by the founders of many conscious companies. We want to build a business on love and care because most businesses operate with a lot of fear and stress. Right? You see a lot of indications of that. One of the saddest statistics you will see is this one, that heart attacks are 20% higher on Mondays. Think about that. Beginning of the work week, work is literally killing us. 4 a.m. Monday morning is the peak of heart attacks. In the US, the estimate is that 120,000 Americans die every year from too much stress connected to the work, their jobs, right? The way we lead, manage, and organize. In China, the shocking number is that 600,000 Chinese die from too much work every year. Think about that. The human cost of doing business is so high, and we don't even measure it or capture it on our income statements, but maybe the highest cost that we have, right? It doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to hurt people. We don't have to cause damage to their well-being in order to be a successful business. And it gets back to this idea that love and work define what it means to be a human being, as Freud said. And historically, we have kept these things apart. Love is something that exists in your personal life, and work is you come to work and you're there to do battle and succeed and win and compete. Right? It's a very harsh and tough environment that we create. And my question always was in my research, why can we not combine love and work? And that's what led me down this path. Starting around 2004, I started working on a book that was called Firms of Endearment. And people use words like compassion and love and caring, soulful, etc., to describe these companies. Firms of endearment. What does that mean? Companies that are loved by everybody. Customers love them, employees love them, communities embrace them, suppliers are loyal to them, etc. Right? And so I discovered companies that were loved by everybody. What made that happen was that they actually embodied the four pillars: the higher purpose, the stakeholder orientation, caring and conscious leaders, and a caring culture, right? And we looked at these companies, and then we did the financial analysis at the end of our research. We found 28 companies in the original book, and we said, okay, how do they perform for their investors? They're paying their people much better, many cases double, like Costco compared to Walmart. They're providing much better benefits. They're investing in their customer experience. They're paying their suppliers well. They're investing in their communities. They're investing in the environment. And they were paying taxes at a higher rate. And we said maybe investor returns are average or not, maybe even below average, because they are not trying to maximize their profit. What we actually found is that these companies dramatically outperform the market. It was 9-1 over 10 years in the original set of companies. In the second edition of the book, we had 74 companies. It was almost 8-1 over a 20-year period, as you can see. So these companies are very profitable. Here's another data point as well that looked at conscious companies compared with the S&P 500, good to great, but also ethical companies. And you can see that conscious companies over a 20-year period dramatically outperform. The second highest are ethical. Third is the market overall, and the fourth is good to great, which is a set of companies that were only selected because they were about trying to maximize their profit. And you can see in the long run, they don't even perform on average what the market is doing, because they're not connected to what society needs and what they don't have a higher purpose. Right? So again, this works. These companies are very profitable and successful, even though they are not trying to maximize profit. And profit is important. Being a conscious capitalist doesn't mean you don't care about profit. See, without profit, a business cannot survive, right? And society cannot function. Governments do not create wealth. Governments can only tax and spend the wealth created by a business. So it's important to be profitable as a business, but always remember it matters very much how you make the money. Because you can make the money by squeezing your employees and squeezing your suppliers and damaging the environment and destroying the ecosystem and so forth. And that's not a business. That's a parasite. That means you're sucking value from the planet and from people and others, just making money for yourself. A true business creates many kinds of wealth. And businesses can also destroy wealth. Right? So if you look at the kinds of impact business can have, there's financial wealth, of course, but there's also intellectual capital, the innovations and the breakthroughs. There's social capital, how much trust and cohesion exists in society, emotional well-being, living with love and care, not fear and stress in your life, having meaning and purpose, that is spiritual well-being, the impact on the culture, the impact on our bodies, the impact on the planet. These are all the consequences of how you operate. In a traditional business, the traditional mindset was all about maximizing the financial and really saying everything else is a side effect and we are not responsible for that. Well, in fact, there's no such thing on this planet called a side effect. We do things and there are effects. And all of the effects matter. You are responsible for all of the consequences of your actions. So this is about doing business with a spectrum of positive effects. And this kind of captures the old way of being, right? The sense of complacency and disconnection. right? Where these people are struggling to stay alive and these people are feeling comfortable. But the fact is that we are all in the same boat. This planet is one system, right? And we're all connected. Humanity is one spirit. So we have to start acting this way, especially in the world of business, but in general in our life. So, in conclusion, you have to say that the cause and the solution to most of the world's challenges is capitalism. We have created many of these problems while we created prosperity, but now we also have to be part of the solution. It cannot be done by governments alone or by nonprofits, right? Capitalism has to fundamentally evolve, and then it becomes the greatest business opportunity of the century to solve all these problems that exist. And so we've made a case for conscious capitalism that is multifaceted. There's a social case, right? This is something that is good for society, good for communities. There's a planetary case. This is about healing our planet and the ecosystem and its ability to sustain life. There's a human case. This is about the well-being of people, about putting people at the center. And there's a business case as well, as we've talked about, right? And I deliberately put the business case at the end because that's important. But very often in business, what happens, they all start with and they end with a business case. If they can't immediately make a business case, they don't do it. And I say you need to do these things because they are important and we have to do them for society, for the planet, and for human beings. And by the way, there's also a wonderful business case to be made if you do it right. So all four can exist and must exist together, right? And that's the beauty and the promise and the potential of conscious capitalism. And so I've been on this journey now for about almost 18, 19 years, starting in 2004 or 5. And the more I study it, the more I realize it really works. And you will see in your business courses that there are many aspects of what it means to be a successful business. And these businesses just work well. Their sales grow faster, their sales per square foot and sales per employee are higher. They have the benefit of positive word of mouth. Their gross margins might be lower, but their net margins are higher. Why? They pay their suppliers well, they pay their employees well. Right? So they're not trying to squeeze, so their gross margin may go down, but then their marketing costs are much lower, sometimes zero. Their employee turnover is much lower, sometimes like a fraction of their competitors, but their passion and the engagement and the commitment is much higher, so they get so much better output and creativity and innovation. People trust each other, so their legal costs are lower. People know their job, so you don't need many managers telling people what to do, so you don't have that many layers. Administrative costs are lower, and they're much more resilient in tough times like the pandemic or the financial crisis because they practice a philosophy of inclusive flourishing, a way of doing business where everybody matters and everybody ultimately wins. And that is a very important principle for you to keep in mind. Every decision we make in business, we have to make sure that everybody's voice is being heard and that nobody is being hurt as a result of that decision. In the long run, we're making sure that everybody is thriving and everybody is succeeding and everybody is winning. So again, I want to wish you all the best, and I look forward to meeting many of you in person along this journey. I think it's an exciting time. The stakes could not be higher, but our ability to do something about all of the challenges we face also could not be higher. So we can solve every problem that exists in front of us by simply having the will and the inspiration and the creativity, and then using business as a force for good.